Hey yo, everybody. Dr. Devin here, and appropriately, I got my Make Kids Healthy Again hat on. We have these at the Lighthouse for a reason. So, to say that I've been a little fired up over the last week watching things unfold in politics, and, let's start at square one, which is saying a prayer for everybody living in the world today, trying to make sense, heads or tails, of the political um, shifts and changes. It is a wild time to be alive. And as much as I don't at all really want to get into that, I do love seeing the conversations that are coming to light. I do enjoy seeing things that I feel like our team has talked about for years make it to mainstream conversations. And so, for example, um, and what we're going to kind of open up, this week is um, a Tucker Carlson interview with Dr. Casey Means and Kaylee Means. Let me turn this off here so we keep quit getting those pings. Um, but we saw some things come out last week in that episode with Tucker Carlson, and then Bobby Kennedy made an announcement that he's going to back Trump, and you see these hats coming out saying "Make America Healthy Again," and different interviews coming to light where we're talking about this crisis, right? This is the word that keeps getting used. There's a crisis in healthcare for kids today. And I got goosebumps. I cried multiple times last week because, we've been in practice here at the Lighthouse since 2003, in practice, or 2013, sorry, and at Veronica Chiropractic since 2011, been studying health and chiropractic since 2001, which all makes me feel so young to say some of these things out loud. But I've spent thousands of hours as a chiropractor, as a healthcare, student myself, as a mother, as a leader. I've traveled literally around the world and gotten to speak at different events alongside some of the names that you see in headlines today. And I feel very blessed, but it also feels very, very surreal. And I know Jess, who's kind of helping us run this project, feels the same way in seeing so many of the things we've talked about for years coming to light in big, big ways these days. And so this week was big in the Tucker Carlson episode, in the Bobby Kennedy announcement, and it makes me want to focus this week on the topic of sick kids and what we can do about it, what I feel like we've got to do about it, what I feel like has been, on my heart for years and keeps just getting clearer and clearer, and some of the stats that they shared, because now it's becoming a focus, and so you're going to see all these stats come out. Now science catches up with what a lot of us in practice and in clinics across, the board of all different kinds of disciplines like chiropractic, naturopathy, functional med, even holistic pediatricians and holistic natural practitioners. We've been seeing this for years. Well, now it's like stats always lag behind what is going on in the real world. And now here we are. So some of the things that came up on the show were this wake up call. Dr. Casey said she quit medical school after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to become, a surgeon. And she opted to quit her road in healthcare because she saw the underbelly of what it was. And specifically what gave me the jolt was where she shared that, she was being taught how to cut things out and she was being taught how to prescribe things, but she wasn't really being taught about healing. She wasn't really being taught about what makes people heal or about how to get people better. It was really, crisis management, which I'm not, again, we'll talk about that towards the end of this, but it's the overuse of force, the overuse of intervention, and the lack of reverence or even awareness in traditional medical education when it comes to things like nutrition, diet, exercise, sleep, what really makes a person heal on a whole level. So she talks about 50% of kids are chronically ill. Guys, what that means is that there are millions of children in our country, and we spend more money than any other country on the planet on healthcare. And there are more children in our hometowns sick with diagnosis they may never get out from under and that are preventable. So when you look up when you look up the top 5 causes of death currently in our country are injury, congenital or birth defects, cancer, respiratory illnesses, and suicide. If that doesn't just jolt you, so yes, I'm talking about chronic illness, but then how that plays out and that these kids are growing up with chains and shackles of sickness, of fatigue, um, and that it could have been prevented with some shifts in education, some shifts in awareness, some more support and strategy from every level, doctors, teachers, government. They're sick because we're making them sick. They're sick because of choices we have made. And so all of these stats are kind of one thing. If you say, 50% of kids have a chronic illness, right? That's one thing. But when you say millions of kids are sick because of the choices that I am making, that we are making, we have to take these stats and we got to make it personal. Otherwise, we will likely, because it's human nature, become apathetic, turn our heads and look away because it's dark, it's ugly, nobody wants to look at it. But I hope that this is an invitation that we take it closer and it's not just some for show Tucker Carlson episode, and that you look at the kids in your household and then you look at your nieces, nephews, your family line. You look at the friends that your kids are hanging out with. You look at the kids in your communities, depending on your, career discipline, that you start to look at, am I in arm's length that I can do something about this problem? That's the place I want to talk about this from today. And so we've got, the chronic illness, 50%. 1 in 5 children are clinically obese, which means they are at a much higher statistical you probability that they will develop things like diabetes, different heart diseases, cancer. It's literally like putting shackles or a cage around a child for the rest of their life because they will have to fight against that momentum and current. What do we do about it? How did we get here? Is where we're going to go with this. Mental crisis. So 1 in 6 kids between the ages of 2 and 8 have some sort of mental, behavioral, or developmental disability or diagnosis. 1 in 6, guys. 1 in 6 have some. This is they call it a mental health crisis, mental health emergency. And I hope it hits you like that because it's happening on our watches. Technology screen time is through the roof. So we're going to do some stats with that where the Academy, American Academy of Pediatrics says, please don't let kids under the age of 5 specifically, but under the age of 12 even, because neurodevelopment is still happening at a rapid rate, keep them off of screens for any more than an hour per day. The average US child is on some form of screen 4 to 7 hours a day. And so parents, what I would invite you is to maybe talk to your teachers about how much screen time kids are getting at your school. How much screen time is your child getting in those settings that you aren't there to see or supervise? And then how much time are they getting at home? And add that up and then look at the different things that we've talked about on some of the virtual office hours, or you can look online. There's a ton of research and stats coming out of the negative implications of screen time on brain development, on mental health, on physical health, and how that ties forward. Then if they're having screen activity, they're not having real life activity. Most of them, the average recommendation is also that they get at least an hour of physical activity. But it's only around 24% of kids today are getting that hour that they need. So they're not moving. And then you get into the dietary concerns where, on the episode with Tucker Carlson and the means duo, that it was, 1 in 10 kids are getting their dosage of fruits and veggies. And that at least 13 million kids are living in food insecure homes, meaning that they don't have accessibility to nutritional food at all. So they're eating processed poison. they're on screens, they're not moving, they're obese, they're in mental crisis, and it's no wonder that they then end up in these clinical, chronic illnesses and diagnosis labels that stick with them, not just in their youth, but with them through a lifetime because they were not taught functional skills as children to be healthy. I am all for education and the fact that kids need to learn math and reading and history and science. That's all good and fine. But if there's anybody out there that can argue me that it is vitally important for them to understand health, there is little that they can get from a book or mathematics or science if they don't fundamentally understand things like nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, and what they can do about it. So we grow these kids up, we put them in these preventable cages and sicknesses, and then we don't give them the keys to get themselves out. And then they grow up with a whole momentum in a sick and tired, diseased road that they then have to pay the price for because no one advocated for them. And this is why I'm so excited to see these conversations coming out and so excited, regardless of your political beliefs. I hope that we could all get behind the idea that we want to see kids be healthy again, that we want America to be healthier. I don't understand how we could, in the least bit, argue that we are unhealthy and that we need to get healthier. Like, there, could we meet in that common ground? They went on to talk about the financial impact of these statistics. Because again, it's like, okay, we've got millions of sick kids. What toll is that taking? Well, you can imagine if you are a parent or you know a parent of a child that is sick consistently. And I'm talking anywhere from chronic ear infections to autism to allergies to asthma to ADHD to depression, pandas, I mean, you name it, to pick an illness. What is the financial toll? Nearly $14 billion annually that this is taking a toll on families, on our economy. This is a big business driver. So, another part of that Robert Kennedy and the Means and Tucker Carlson movement, the quote that just, is that there's nothing more profitable than a sick child, and that there are systematic efforts to get kids sick and keep them sick. And I know that that is really difficult and can feel conspiracy theory, that there is some, ploy to keep us sick. But if you zoom out and we try to keep this in a, neutral space, and we just look at the proof, right? Here's the proof in these stats. Let's look at what kids and families are eating today. Let's look at screen time. Let's look at sleep patterns. Let's look at all of our lifestyle choices that are common in our culture today. And then let's look at the health statistics, the diagnosis statistics, the prognosis statistics, the money going into all of these machines. The proof is in the pudding that we're really sick and what we're doing is not working. And I don't think there's anything conspiracy about that. And it's important that we take this pain and we turn it into purpose, that we each get behind, whether it's for our own kids or on missions like we are at the Lighthouse, to do it for kids everywhere. That not on my watch will this trajectory continue, because this is a national, probably global issue, and it's so big that it can feel really overwhelming. And I want the opposite to come from this conversation. I instead want you to hear 50% of all kids are chronically ill. 1 in 5 are diabetic. 1 in 6 are in mental health emergency, mental, behavioral, developmental. They're not getting the food they need. They're not moving their bodies. They're stuck on technology. $14 billion toll. Only 24% of kids getting at least 1 hour of activity a day. 13 million living in food insecure homes. Our C-section rate is up above 30% in our country right now. 30 to 40% of kids, that's a third of all children, have antibiotic intervention within the first 2 years of life when we know, and there are posters in children's hospitals across our country saying, "Stop using antibiotics." We understand the long-term implications, and I talked about it last week when we talked about the gut-brain connection and the importance of a healthy, vital biome. When we're using these antibiotics, we are killing the intelligence inside of us. We are killing off our body's ability to adapt and to heal. And so we darn sure need to make sure that we're using antibiotics in a very intentional way and underusing them, not overusing them. And yet a third of all kids have this type of antibiotic use that then goes on to kill not just the bad bugs in their system, but all the good bugs too. 4 to 7 hours of screen time. Top 5 deaths, guys. Injury, congenital or birth defects, which I could segue into here. Were they just were they defects, natural defects, congenital abnormalities, or is it part of the chemical stress, emotional stress, physical stress that moms are under? Does it also tie to, on a macro level, problems that we have with GMOs and toxicities that we're putting on our skin and in our bodies? And the epigenetic effect over the course of generations of sick grandma has a sick mom, has a sick daughter, and you see the lineage of how mental, chemical, physical, emotional diseases and sicknesses are being passed. Like, is it that God made some type of junk and things happen? But number 2 on the list is congenital abnormalities and birth defects. Is it us? Are we contributing to that? Are we consuming products and unhealthy behaviors that are making everybody sick in the first place, that are making our kids sick? Number 3, cause of death under the age of 12, cancer. I remember deciding that I wanted to be a pediatric chiropractor and that I wanted to learn about taking care of kids. And I was so fired up, and I still am. But I remember the first heartbreaks because I've been to more funerals for kids than adults in my practice, and that's the hardest part of being on this mission is witnessing the devastation that families go through, witnessing cancer in children and going to a 4-year-old's funeral, going to a 13-year-old's funeral, watching their mothers try to go on and raise other children. Um, and it is often difficult to have these conversations without feeling like I'm adding more shame to the game because on one hand, I want to shake every single mother and father and go, "Stop. Wake up. We've got to make changes. We've got to quit putting poison in children. We've got to change what we're consuming. We've got to change diet and exercise. We've got to get healthy ourselves. We've got to we've got to change this." When I want to shake them. And on the other hand, I know that I was that mom that didn't know better in my birth with Roman. I didn't know I had options. I didn't know that I could say no to the epidural that blocked me, that turned that into a forceps, that turned it into a vagus nerve injury, that translated. I see the domino effect of what happened in my ignorance. I see what happened when I didn't know that we could opt out of vaccinations. And so I chose to do them because that's what good moms did, even though when I took Roman in, everything in me was like, I don't want to do. I mean, it was just very innate at that point. I was totally green in motherhood and had no education in chiropractic yet. But I know what I saw then. And since then, my awakening has now been 19 years in the process, right? So when I, on one hand, want to shake parents, I also have the grace and compassion to understand like sometimes you just don't know until you know. what I love about all these conversations coming through on big networks is that we won't be able to use ignorance anymore because now these stats are mainstream. Now they're everywhere. Now everybody sees that our kids are sick and suffering and dying, and we could be doing something about it. And so I think about those families and I think about those children that I know in my life and in my practice that have been diagnosed and passed away with cancer. And I can thank them for the imprint they've made on my heart to stay dedicated to this mission and to see it through. And that I believe on some levels they signed up with God to come show us and teach us through their suffering that we're not doing something right and that we can course correct it. Because when you look and it's injury and these congenital abnormalities and cancer, respiratory illnesses, and suicide, I believe we have access to make change in all 5 of those today in an instant. So what can you do? Of course, I'm gonna say get adjusted, and here's why. It's nervous system regulation. Every other system in the body, your skin, your muscles, your bones, your immune system, your digestive system, your reproductive system, all of it. Every other system function in the body functions because of the nervous system, the brain, and the spinal cord, and nervous system conduction throughout our body. The way that your body talks to your brain and the way that your brain talks to your body controls everything. I'm not telling you you got to bring kids to the lighthouse or that you need to bring your families here. I am going to tell you that you can and that that's the whole mission we're set out on. And that if you don't live here, we're happy to help you find someone, but get checked by somebody that specializes in the tone of your nervous system. Because if they provide a surface that allows your system to regulate itself better. So more specifically, when we look at this for kids, it reduces stress, it enhances immune system function, it helps their nervous systems regulate, which would then tie to all the other things we've talked about. And if they grow up in this community and they feel seen and they feel loved and they feel supported and they see things like expect miracles and the power that made your body heals your body, and that they see a team that believes they're inherently strong and has an innate capacity to heal. If they grow up in that type of a village, then they will become teenagers, young adults, and eventually parents and members of our society that expect miracles, that believe the power that made the body heals the body. The way that we raise them is the way that they will grow up to be. So the reason we're on a mission to create a community, not just adjust kids, but create a supportive community in conversations like this is because I know if I can plant a seed in you, you can serve them better. And I am trying to get to them through you. And you are a child. And you weren't probably handed the best set of circumstances. And we all have something that we're navigating and we're trying to heal. So, my ability to succeed as a mother and to raise my kids strong and fearless and courageous and confident and healthy and set up for health and vitality and success in their years to come. The way that I get to be that mom is to be that woman. So get in that type of village because it's contagious, and that's, what I was gonna say in terms of the effect here, right? So if there are sick kids in a home, if there is a sick or stuck parent in a home, here's the way that that plays out. Number 1, there is an emotional contagion. It's contagious. It's why you can walk in a room and without saying a word, say that 2 people were in the room before you and they were having an argument. You can feel that when you walk in. The same is across the board. If parents are stressed about money or they're stressed about one of their children being sick, everybody in the home can feel it. If we're stressed about work, if we're stressed about anything, if a child is sick, that takes an emotional contagion effect on everybody in the home. So this becomes a yoke that an entire family carries. It leads to communication breakdown because nobody is operating in their highest capacity. Everybody's operating in some form of fight, flight, or freeze. We're stressed out, and that breaks down the communication and decision making. It affects everybody's routine, the rhythms, and the healthy consistency and stability that children need, that families need for healthy growth and adaptability. Um, it 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 affects the overall burden, like I said. And unless we have coping skills that didn't come, unless we go seek out a different way, we're at the mercy of whatever we learned from our mom and dad. And so you see this generational cascade because we stay stuck in these patterns. And then that burden just gets passed on. And then the kids that grow up sick become sick parents who have sicker kids. And it just magnifies. And that's how we've landed here in the first place. The health impact that this has, because children that grow up in stress and sickness don't thrive at their full capacity, and that affects the parents and the other kids in the house. That affects the kids in the classroom because the teacher has to be mindful of that. The ripple effect of this through that child's life, through grade school, middle school, high school, college, and then they have kids, and then I'm seeing now moms who say, like, "My anxiety, my this." Well, now the daughter is mimicking and mirroring what she's grown up watching her daughter say, or what watching her mom say. Or, it says, "What it runs in my family," right? We hear that. And it's because for years we're being subconsciously programmed for sickness. So the mission is change the trajectory. The mission is start today. If we look at some of the access points that you can be the change, you can get your family off the sick train track. Number one, above everything, I would invite curiosity and compassion. What am I doing that is limiting the health capacity of myself and my family? Because I'm not perfect. And I know there's 100 things that I could be doing better. And when I invite that and I go, okay, let me get honest. What kind of, like, let me just inventory the food. I get the groceries in my house. So my kids can't access crappy food if I don't buy it. My greatest mentor, his slogan was, when it comes to nutrition, was don't bring the devil in the house. And sugar is the devil. Processed foods are the devil. And when you see it that way and you go, okay, I want to help our family lose weight. I want to help our family decrease inflammation. I want to help our family enhance their immune system function. I want to help this chronic illness emergency that we're seeing in kids today by being healthy. That's the most radical rebel thing you can do in these times where sickness is the norm. Be healthy. Where sadness and depression and suicide are becoming a norm, be happy, be joyful, be grateful, show up, be kind, be compassionate. When we see this political division, look for ways that we can find a common ground together in anchoring things like make kids healthy again, make America healthy again. This We are living in interesting times. And I believe we're born for this. And I think we're going to see brighter and brighter days ahead because we're having better and better, more empowering conversations. And for the love of our children, for the hope of our future, please join us in this mission. Control your controllables like diet and exercise, sleep and screen time. Surround yourself with positive, healthy people. Be kind and courteous when you're hearing somebody and maybe they're in this stuck cycle. Share conversations like this. Sometimes it's tough to have the dialogue. Share the Tucker Carlson interview. Share something that maybe your mom or dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, cousin, niece, nephew, share it. Just share. You never know who's going to see it. The ripple effect of negativity will be trumped so easily by the ripple effect of positivity. And we're going to see, like, the tipping point that we're after is not that 50% of people in our country get these concepts. It's that maybe 15 to 20%. When we hit that sweet spot of about 14, 15%, that tipping point, it changes everything. My prediction is in the next few years, we're gonna live in a very different world. But first, we're gonna have to face the darkness and replace it with light. I hope this message found you well. If you have any specific questions about things that I shared, we'll share some of the stats down in the comments. But let's do our part and let's change the trajectory and let's make kids healthy again.